It has been reported that Paul Manafort has broken or breached the plea deal that he was given in response to the 8 charges that he was convicted of earlier this year. Now, I'll give you the details on how he did so. He repeatedly lied to federal investigators in breach of a plea agreement he signed 2 months ago. The special counsel's office said so in a court filing today. And this will essentially relieve prosecutors of all promises they made to Manafort in the plea agreement reached in mid-September. Prosecutors will not ask for a lighter punishment in return for his cooperation. So the story is developing and we don't know exactly how he lied, but what we do know is the terms of his plea deal were pretty good considering the fact that he's 69 years old and he's been convicted of 8 felonies. I mean, he could spend the rest of his life in prison, which is the reason why he decided to take the plea deal, which essentially capped his sentence at 10 years. So the deal dismissed deadlock charges against Manafort from an earlier trial, but only after successful cooperation with Mueller's probe into Russian election interference. Obviously, based on what Mueller is alleging here, or what prosecutors are alleging, he did not successfully cooperate. Also, the agreement calls for a 10-year cap on how long Manafort will be sent to prison and for Manafort to serve time from his separate Virginia and Washington cases concurrently. So those are now off the table since he has allegedly breached his plea deal.
So let me tell you what we know and don't know. So Manafort's a snake. That's why he got convicted on 8 felony counts. He might even have a snake coat. Yeah, we know he has an ostrich coat. That's literal, by the way, the ostrich coat. And he's apparently been evading the law for a long time in the US, and hence why a jury convicted him. So what we don't know is if any of the stuff that he gave prosecutors is related to Donald Trump. Now what we know is he tried to hide more evidence of worse, apparently worse crimes, right? Now, prosecutors don't just take people's word for it. They usually have other evidence from other witnesses, documents, et cetera, and they build a case. And if the 2 things match, they go, okay, then this is more likely to be true, and hence we should put that in the category of things that we need to build a case around because we at least have corroborating evidence. Plus, it'll be easier to prove in court because it's true, and we have 2 different sources. Now, when the sources don't match up, they go, uh-oh. That's a good way of catching people in a lie. And apparently that's what happened here with Manafort. But again, with Manafort, the biggest mystery is not whether Manafort's a crook. That part, the jury's literally in on that, right? But whether Manafort has information on Russian collusion with Trump during the campaign when he was campaign manager, and to what degree. Now remember, he got the plea deal in the first place because the information that he promised apparently was good enough to get the plea deal, but now even that information, apparently they didn't, some of it did not corroborate. Now, look, there's one last possibility here. One possibility is, hey, you know what? Maybe he lied about Trump. And the prosecutors are like, no, that's actually not true, what you said Trump knew about the Russians. Okay, so that might actually exonerate Trump in that sense. And these are real hardened prosecutors that are not, in a case of this magnitude, are not going to get embarrassed by presenting wrong evidence, okay? Especially under this kind of pressure. Of course, the second possibility is that Manafort hid larger crimes that him, Trump, and Russia were involved in. Okay, so in one case, Manafort would be in bigger trouble, but he alone would be in the bigger trouble. In the other case, now that they got him again and he's got to face life in prison again, he might be like, okay, fine, I'll tell you the real crimes. And that is just huge. But we just don't know. We don't have enough information here to be able to tell if it's scenario number 1 or scenario number 2.
Despite the fact that the plea deal is no longer at play, Manafort is urging the judge to set a date for sentencing. So we'll find out soon enough how long he's going to be behind bars.
Yeah, if he's drawn the line and saying, all right, you caught me, I'll just take my sentence. I mean, that's not the kind of thing where you'd be like, oh, I'm afraid of what Trump's gonna say about me on Twitter. That's the kind of thing where you're afraid of what the Russians will do. And you go, all right, screw it, I guess life in prison.
You know, I actually have one more point to make about this. Look, far too often when we do stories about greed, it feels like the bad guys always win. And it feels good. Like, take Russia out of it for a second, take collusion, take Trump, all of that out of it. What Manafort did was serve as a foreign agent for pro-Russian interests in Ukraine, okay? And he did all of that because he wanted to buy ostrich coats, which were ugly and unnecessary. And he's now paying the price for that. He's paying the consequences, the greed, the bad behavior. Finally, there are consequences for a bad guy who is so obsessed with money. And that's a good feeling.
Not only was he a foreign agent and did not tell people and did propaganda on behalf of the Russian government and their allies, but also hid the money so he wouldn't be taxed on it. And so the fact that they actually got a tax cheat is also incredible and feels good for all of you guys who are hardworking Americans and pay your taxes.
Yes.
And by the way, that justice brought to you by the special counsel, Robert Mueller. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.